Hi, my name is Ann Vague, and I want to welcome all of you to Waterline Writers. It's exciting to see everybody here. Without further ado, we're going to get right to our first writer. Our first writer is John K. Manos, and John graduated from Knox College in 1974. After 4 years in educational publishing, he worked in magazines from 1980 until 2001 for 14 years as editor-in-chief of Consumer Digest magazine. Since 2001, he has earned his living as a writer and freelance editor. Kirkus says his first novel, Dialogues of a Crime, is one of the best indie books of 2013, and the San Francisco Book Review called it a 5-star novel. Its free Kindle promotion resulted in 26,468 downloads, 6,000 of which paid anyway. So I think we all want to know his secret on that. John Manos, please come on up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Kirkus called the book, I'll have to read it because I'm not remembering. You'd think I have this imprinted on my brain, but I don't. A character-driven crime novel ruled by complex men facing the past. So I'm going to introduce you to the two men they're referring to in that. I won't give you much background on it because it'd be too hard to, but the chapter I'm going to read is very late in the book. It follows one character, Michael Politz, has just been deposed by a state's attorney as part of an investigation of two murders that occurred 22 years earlier. The other character you'll meet, Detective Larry Klinger, is pursuing that cold case, which he hopes will lead through Politz to a mob boss who is like a second father to Politz. That's all the background I'm going to give you. You'll have to read the book to figure it out otherwise. All right. Shortly before noon, 3 days after the deposition with Whitaker, the state's attorney, the receptionist at Michael's advertising agency buzzed his office to announce a visitor. Michael was perplexed at first, but by the time he reached the lobby, he remembered who Larry was. He found Klinger rocking on his heels in front of one of the two wall-mounted television screens the company had installed to continuously run its own commercials. The detective gazed appraisingly at a Sears ad, his lips pursed. He looked as though he was studying a work of art that he wasn't sure he understood. He glanced over his shoulder and grinned as Michael approached. "You do this?" he asked, thrusting a stubby thumb at the screen. "No," Michael answered. Klinger extended his hand. "You feel like some lunch?" "Why not?" Michael answered. He turned to the receptionist to tell her he'd be back in about an hour, then led the way out to the elevators. "Nice offices," Klinger said. "Yeah," Michael agreed warily. They boarded an empty elevator. "You want to know what a nice guy I am?" Klinger asked, smiling. "I didn't identify myself when I asked for you. Just told that little doll I was Larry." Michael laughed. "Well, I guess I appreciate that," he chuckled, "but they'd probably find it glamorous if they thought I had trouble with the police." "Ignorance is bliss," Klinger replied. "Where's a good place to eat?" "I like a Chinese joint around the corner," Michael answered as they left the elevator. "It's quick and good. That okay with you?" Sure. I eat anything." As they stepped into the May sunshine, Klinger stretched luxuriantly, his arms wide. "My God, what a fine day," he announced, breathing deeply. Michael nodded. "We get so few like this in Chicago," Klinger added. He was happy and he gestured for Michael to lead the way. They walked to the restaurant without speaking. It was a small, noisy, unassuming place. Klinger was pleased. He never felt entirely at ease in upscale restaurants and said so. Michael smiled as they sat in the booth and placed their orders. He sipped water and waited while Klinger looked around and shifted his bulk comfortably into the corner of the padded vinyl bench. The waiter brought the first part of their order. "Boy, you weren't kidding about the quick part," Klinger beamed. Michael smiled and nodded. "You know," Klinger said, "you really surprised me the other day." "How's that?" Michael asked. He picked up an egg roll and dipped in the sauce, pushed it over to Klinger. "When you confirmed Bobby Andrews' claims about what you said, anyone else would have said he couldn't remember." "I did remember," Michael answered. "Actually, I was more embarrassed than anything else." Klinger took a few bites. He said, "That's strong food and it's great." Finally, he composed himself and said, "Why do you say you were embarrassed?" It With such sophomoric bravado, it reminded me of what a dumb kid I was. Hey, I like that phrase, Klinger said. Sophomoric bravado. I'll have to remember that one. I should write it down. He smiled. You have a good memory? I'm notorious for it, Michael answered. Yeah, me too. Of course, most detectives have good memories. Michael replied, I'd assume it's necessary for the job. It helps, Klinger said. He loosened his tie. But you know, most people get serious amnesia when it comes to, how should I put it, potentially incriminating conversations or events. Your answers are kind of unusual. You follow me? Michael could see how Klinger's conversational tics get on a person's nerves. He wondered if it was intentional. He shrugged. Why lie? That's just the point, Klinger said joyfully. There's a lot of good reasons to lie. He grinned. And when I asked you out just now, I was almost sure you'd say not without your attorney. Michael shrugged again. He considered it. You know, Klinger continued, I'll let you in on something. Just about everyone I interview, and I mean practically everyone, tries to lie to me. And you wouldn't believe how stupid most of the lies are. But in this case, it wouldn't have been a stupid lie. It would have been a believable lie. That's, you have what they call plausible deniability back when I was a kid. He paused, his lips still drawn back in a wide smile as he later placed bowls of soup on the table. That's why you're such a puzzler to me, he said with immense pleasure. I'm glad to be entertaining, Detective Klinger. Hey, call me Larry, Klinger said affably. He slurped some soup. Boy, that's good, he announced. He slurped some more and then wiped his lips. See, Mike, he said with confidential familiarity, most people don't realize that most of the work cops do is just plain tedious. I mean 90% of the job. You just keep grinding away. It ain't like the TV shows. Lots of times you're just packing some moron off to prison. Everything's obvious and you just make sure you do everything legal so some judge doesn't let the bad guy walk. He finished his soup and smacked his lips with satisfaction. But when things are more complex, which is hardly ever the case, then you gotta grind away until you get it together. A little piece here, a little piece there, until you get the whole picture. You follow? Michael nodded, wondering where Klinger was headed. Let me give you an example, Klinger said. One of the best cops I ever knew was a guy who worked in accident investigations, of all things. That ain't exactly the glamour division of the department. A few years ago, we had a hit and run down on Western Avenue. A couple kids were crossing the street like at 9 at night, and a car hit them and drove off. They were killed. So now it's a homicide, so I'm there. We had a couple of witnesses, but they didn't know what kind of car it was, what color it was, whether the driver had hit the hooks, which he had from the skid marks. We didn't even all agree on which direction it was going when it hit the kids, even though we could figure that out from the street. Let me tell you, juries love eyewitnesses, but a lot of times they aren't too helpful. They think they saw something, but they really didn't. Excuse me. So this guy from Major Accidents gets a flashlight and spends I don't know how long crawling around the street, collecting all these little pieces of glass and plastic. He had the idea that it was a side mirror from the car that hit the kids. So he takes this bag full of plastic and glass back to the station and sits at a table with a roll of Scotch tape. And for hours, he tries to fit these little tiny busted up pieces together again. And you know what? It was the side mirror from the car. We finally ID'd the make and model and found the driver and prosecuted him. All because that cop had the patience to put that mirror back together. He lifted a huge forkful of food into his mouth and looked up expectantly. Sounds like admirable dedication, Mike finally offered. I guess, Klinger said dismissively. He sounded disappointed. Tell me, way back then, were you a draft dodger? From his tone, Michael didn't think he was serious with the pejorative. He answered, you mean during Vietnam? No, I was pretty apolitical. Once I went to prison, it was a moot point anyway. Klinger laughed merrily, his stomach jiggling against the table. You never know, he said. By 1972, the Army might have taken anyone who was willing to go. How about you, Michael asked. Oh, I served. Back in the 60s. Lots of cops my age were in the service then. Stationed in Vietnam, too. You see any action? As a matter of fact, I had the dubious privilege of participating in the first open engagement with the NVA. Michael looked up. He said, you were in Nha Drang? Klinger's mouth dropped open. How in the hell do you know that? Michael shrugged. The detective exclaimed with wonder, my God, no one knows about that fight. How in the world? You couldn't have been 10. So I was 13, but that's not now how I know about it, Michael answered. I read a lot. Now I'm impressed, Klinger beamed. So you're a regular Army, Michael said, smiling and infected by Klinger's enthusiasm. Were you with the unit that got overrun or the one that held a solid perimeter? My God, Klinger bellowed again. You really do know about it. He shook his head, laughing and awestruck. I was with the disciplined battalion, he answered at length. Thank God. He shook his head again. You amaze me, Mike. Yeah. Well, like I say, I read a lot. If I recall correctly, Yadrang is what convinced the North Vietnamese that American air power would make any pitched battles a losing proposition. Who knows, Klinger said happily. I was just a grunt. I got to come home after that. Were you wounded? Yes, sir, Klinger bellowed. Shot in the ass. He laughed loudly, drawing glances from other diners. Want to see the scar? No? For some reason, nobody ever does. He kept chuckling as they divided the bill and started to leave. Jesus, he said, still abashed. What a memory. You're the first person I ever met who knew the name of that valley. Michael followed him back out onto the street. Tell me something, Larry. Do you think about it much? Have nightmares? Anything like that? Not really, never did, to tell the truth. I haven't even dreamed about it for years, Klinger replied. I rarely think about it now. They walked back toward Michael's building. Well, that's sort of how I feel about my little episode in prison, Michael said. I don't even want to think about it. Point taken, kiddo, Klinger answered with a smile. Point taken. Michael stopped near the building entrance and looked at the detective. Why are you so concerned about a couple of really rotten guys who got killed more than 20 years ago? Why? Klinger asked, with his forehead wrinkled by his eyebrows. You may not believe this, Mike, but I don't think anyone should get away with murder. You follow me? He met Mike's gaze soberly. Murder's wrong, he said. Michael nodded without breaking eye contact and smiled. He turned to go back to work. As he reached for the door, Klinger called after him. Hey, Mike! Michael turned back. Nice restaurant, Klinger said. Thank you all.